Okay, so tonight we're holding with Scorpio, Mazal, the 8th sign. We've been talking a little bit about the elements, which is a very important topic: water, air, fire, and earth. And each element tells a lot about the individual, just the element alone. If you belong to the water element, which Scorpio does, then you are more emotional than those who belong to the air element, which tend to be more intellectual, more airy, more abstract. If you belong more to the earth element, like Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, you're more pragmatic, practical, conservative, stubborn, consistent. A lot of good things. Every element has something good, something to contribute. We need all of them. Those who are the fire element are full of life and enthusiasm. A lot of them have a lot of initiative and so forth. Very loving, very demonstrative. Each one has their weaknesses and their strengths. And the interesting part about all of this is that every one of us has a little bit of all the elements. And what's very interesting is that those that have much more of one element than another, you can even recognize them by just looking at their face, without even having them spoken a word, without having them reacted. You can just tell, because there's a dominant element. And whenever there's a dominant element, which means that the hour and the month have the same sign, then he or she will be much more truer to that sign and will display many or the majority of the characteristics of that sign. When somebody says, this does not match my sign, this does not fit me too well, he will always say this yes and this not, then you know that the hour may be very different. So there are certain things in the horoscope, as they call it, certain things in the chart, which take away or accentuate, intensify certain characteristics. And let's not forget the genes and one's education. All of that has a lot to do with it. When we talk about a sign, as we will tonight, Scorpio, we're going to be talking about the water element in a different expression. This is not the Cancer, this is not the Pisces. All three belong to the water element. Nevertheless, they share a lot in common. And those who have been following Cancer, you will notice the differences, you will notice certain things in common. Water meaning sensitivity, meaning emotions. That is a very, very strong part of their nature. How it is demonstrated, that of course we will see tonight. Each one demonstrates it slightly different. However, for those of you who are not here and who are interested in knowing an important fact about compatibility, water element signs get along with water elements, and they get along well with earth elements. They do not get along with fire elements, and not as well with air elements. Nonetheless, if you find a match, a friendship, a marriage, where there are elements that are supposed to be not compatible, just remember what I said. Most likely, more than anything else, the factor that will allow or tolerate the opposite element is the hour. If you can get along with someone, especially if that hour is exactly your sign. We're not going to talk too much about hours. Suffices to say that it helps to know the hour. But if you do not know the hour, every 2 hours of the day, there's a different rising sign called the ascendant, or the Ophic. And it's good to know, because if you know the hour and the month, if you know both signs, then you have 90 to 95% of the personality. You have a lot more. The month itself will tell you a lot, but it could vary depending on the hour and other influences as well.
Even if you were born on different continents, but at the same hour.
Exactly.
So it doesn't.
Yeah. Every 2 hours, depending on the day of birth, that rising sign will vary. If you want to be exact, it needs to be done using mathematics or using a computer program. I don't recommend that you get too involved with this, because it's not that important unless you really want to get to know a person for some reason. You know, it does help build the personality when you combine all these factors, including the genes, what family, you know, he comes from. As I always do, I give an introduction, and many of the points in the introduction relate to the sign. And as we go through the sign, you will understand the points. Point number one, you may have heard, is a very important point and a foundation in Judaism. The rabbis very much encourage us to always remember and believe. Kol man de'avid rachmana letav avid. Everything Hashem does is for the good. Mipi elyon lo tetzeh haraot. We will read a pasuk soon in Tisha B'Av in Megillat Echa, that from above nothing bad comes down, no harm comes down from above, because Hashem is loving. And even though it appears to us as difficult, it's only a perception in our mind. In the end, any difficulty is an atonement. Kaparat avonot, as many of you may have heard. It's an atonement. Or it's a challenge. It's not evil, it's not bad. From above, nothing evil or bad comes down. People can be evil, people can behave in a bad way. Hashem does not do so. He's all loving. And even when He gives us a slap in the face, and that happens from time to time, it's also for the good. Just like a father loves his child and means his well-being, it's a benefit for him. The same way, everything that is in our Mazal, we may perceive it as a difficult, as a challenge, but it's all for our good, for our benefit. And the reason why this point is important for tonight is because you will see a certain aspect of the nature of Scorpio that may not take things easily. We'll be talking a lot about attitude tonight. Having the wrong attitude, the right attitude, and that's what this first point is all about. The positive attitude that Judaism espouses and emphasizes is that everything is good. And if you know that, you will not be upset, you will not take revenge, you will not be resentful, you will not be jealous, you will not feel bad about anything, because everything is for the good. Now that's a very difficult point to adapt in one's life, but if you really learn it well, you will see it in your life, and hopefully you will be able to understand it. Point number 2, in time of need, we recognize who our true friends are indeed. To have a friend, to have a good friend, is a really important, valuable asset. Some signs really think that everybody is their friend because they are popular, but they don't realize that those friendships are not real. Those friends are possibly flattering them and very nice to them, but they're not true friends. A true friend can only be seen in time of need. If he will stick up for you, if he will be willing to sacrifice for you. And there are very few true friends out there. Some signs make it a priority in their life to have a true chaver. To them it's very important to have a real relationship, a strong relationship, a deep relationship. To them that's priority number 1. Not money and not honor, not prestige or popularity. Friendship. Rabbis tell us, K'neh lecha chaver, ze kidai. It's a good thing to have. But you have to invest. K'neh means to acquire, not necessarily with money, with time and effort. It's a good thing. How will you know if he's a true friend or not? In time of need. You will not be 100% certain if somebody is a true friend or not, unless there have been opportunities where it has been tested, whether you tested it or whether the friendship was tested because of the situation, the circumstances. Hopefully, all of us here will at least have one good friend. I say hopefully because it's rare. Most people do not have one real friend. They may have acquaintances. They may have those people who claim to be their friends. And forgive me if you're Persian here, but I like to make fun of them sometimes. You know, they invite a lot of people to their weddings. And they love to come to weddings, especially if there's good food. I assure them that if you really want to know if they're your friend or not, make a wedding and put on the invitation, no food will be served. How many will come to that wedding? Whoever does is a friend. The rest of them, why invite them? And you know what? You may even know beforehand who will come and who will not based on that statement. No food will be served. Then why go out to invite them? No, really. No, think about it logically now. Really logically. Why invite all these people? They couldn't care less. They're coming for the food. They're coming to have a good time. It's a social event to dance. Especially if there's a famous Persian singer that you were a sucker to pay $10,000 for. Whatever, right? Anyway, this is another topic. But there are not too many true friends. Don't throw mud into a well from which you drank. בור ששתית ממנו מים, אל תשלח בו, אל תשליך בו רגב. A piece of mud. This has to do with being grateful, being thankful, being appreciative of somebody that was kind to you, that did you a favor. You don't want to throw something at something that you benefited from. Hopefully a child recognizes the benefits, the blessing that his parents bestowed upon him. A child who's unappreciative, who speaks bad about a parent, who insults a parent, or if it's a friend, whoever it may be, that is a terrible midah, terrible characteristic. The womb that you came from, the one who nursed you, the one who raised you, the one who clothed you and took care of you, and many nights was up for you, and was purely devoted for you. I mean, because you're their child. To think of rebelling against him or to criticize them is cruel. So this does not only apply to family, to relatives, but it also applies to schools or to any organization, to anybody who may have been kind to you. Be very careful not to criticize and definitely not to slander or to speak bad about. Point number 4. Always refuse with your left hand and embrace with your right. What are we talking about here? Those of you who may be familiar with what the rabbis tell us about educating children, they tell us a very important rule. It's tricky. It's tricky to educate a child. You don't want to spoil them, and neither do you want to over-criticize them. Therefore, le'olam te'smol docha v'yimin mekarevet. You have to use both. You're going to need to criticize and refuse and say no, but don't say no with the capital letters. Use your left, weaker hand. You need to refuse, and you will refuse sometimes, and you will criticize sometimes. And you will say no. Use your left hand for that. And by the way, if you did criticize, just don't forget to embrace with your right hand. You need both. You need to criticize sometimes, you need to say no, but you also need to embrace, to love, to kiss, to show affection. And that you should do with the right hand. Or, even better, do it with both hands. Don't do it at the same time or you will confuse the child. Do it a half an hour later, do it a day later. But don't only give him the impression that you don't like him, that you only look at his faults. Give him also the impression that daddy likes me, mommy likes me, they care for me, they do for me, they treat me well, and so forth. You have to use both. Point number 5, very important point. You may have heard it in Pirkei Avot. Eizo gibor hakovesh et yitzro. Who's the strongest of all? A strong man is one who can control his nature, who can control himself. To have self-control is a great virtue. You're not born with it. There are certain things that we are born with. Some people have a very good memory. Some people are smart. They were born with certain gifts. The last point is something that we develop. Nonetheless, there are some who have it easier than others, depending what they have. What tools they received in their mazal, which may help them or not. The more difficult it is, obviously, the reward is greater. The more difficult you have to work in a midah, on a characteristic, on a situation, and you overcome the problem, then of course you will be rewarded much more than one who it comes naturally and easy to him. You're in a difficult predicament, a difficult relationship with a tough husband or a tough wife, and you deal with it in an intelligent way, with self-control and restraint. There's no greater praise than that. Our admiration goes to all those who are able to deal with tough people. Tough people, and there's a lot of tough people out there in the street. I'm sure every one of you knows somebody like that who's tough, difficult, annoying, obnoxious, cruel. And you will hear some additional adjectives when we begin with Scorpio. But you have to learn to live with everyone. And one who is able to succeed in dealing with almost everyone is admirable. It is possible. Okay, Scorpio usually begins October 23rd, goes to November 21. It's an emotional, it's a water element, more emotional and sentimental. But of all the water signs, they are the most determined and forceful. Because even water can trickle down or it can come like Niagara Falls. Scorpio is Niagara Falls. Okay, just remember that. You'll see how later. Very powerful, very passionate. But they could be very jealous, possessive, resentful, obsessive, secretive. These are just some samples of what you're going to hear. And as I've always done, I've put together a more or less description of their personality, how to recognize them, how they interact with people, what they like and what they dislike. And then we will see some of the differences between men and women, advice for the children, and advice for the Scorpio boss. I just want to remind you that there may be some characteristics that I may have left for the women, some for the children, but in reality they're all the same. They're all Scorpios, but some things stand out more as adults, some more as children, some perhaps belong or are more typical of the man, and some more of the women. But more or less, they're all Scorpios, and they pretty much will share most of what you will see. The Scorpio is a private individual. Perhaps he's the most private of all. Private meaning that he doesn't necessarily befriend just anyone. He's more secretive. He doesn't share his feelings that openly. That is what private means. On a whole, he's much more private about his life. And therefore, it just takes longer to get to know him. Whether you're dating one, or whether you have a child, a spouse, who you think you knew, it takes a lot longer to get to know him. However, even though he is private, what's interesting about him, he's interested to know everything about you. Now remember, water elements are all intuitive, especially Pisces and Scorpio. Very intuitive. Scorpio's intuition is so strong that he will actually sense certain things about you, know certain things about you without you even having ever told him. He's able to sense it. He's able to figure out it's in the air. He will be able to know a lot of things about you without you having ever said a word to him. And what he does not know, and he wants to know, he's very forceful, so he will somehow pry it from you. He's very curious. He wants to get to know you. And therefore, he might do something to get that information out of you. Has a very well-controlled nature. But look him in the eye closely and you will notice an intense look. Many, not all, but many Scorpios, if you look at them, that is one way you can tell he's a Scorpio. They have an intense look. On the surface, he's calm, but deep down he may be boiling. You can't tell. Boiling about what? Well, about all sorts of things. About feelings, passion, all sorts of things. But you will not notice it on the surface. Remember, there are certain signs that what they feel is what you see. I mean, they can't hide their feelings. This one is he's a pro in hiding. They are good masters of personality no matter how stirred up their emotions may be. You will barely notice any reflection on their face. Stare at you with a cool look. You will never know and never suspect that anything is wrong or that he's planning anything. However, they are intense about everything they do, whether it's their job, their affection for someone, or their hatred towards something. They have intensity. More than any other sign of all the 12 signs, they are intense in something. Whatever it may be, they are more intense. Intense is different than devotion. Even though they are devoted, intense meaning that they feel strongly. Remember, it's feelings, it's emotion, it's water. We're talking about feeling strongly about something. Not necessarily doing something with intensity. A lot of signs can do that. But they feel strongly about whatever it is they feel. They are very direct and honest. Now, be careful. Since they are direct and honest, if you ask him for advice, he will tell you the brutal truth, as it is. Now, if you are sensitive, you may not want to hear it. But they will tell you exactly the way things are. They will not be diplomatic. Now, does that remind you of the signs who are tactful, whether it was Libra last week, or as we will see Aquarius in a couple weeks from now? There are certain signs who don't want to step on anybody's toes. They carefully choose their words. They want to be everybody's friend. Scorpio does not have that ambition of being everybody's friend. He's not a fire sign where he wants to be popular. He's not an air sign that he can flatter. He's a water sign, but water is usually sensitive. But this is Niagara Falls. Rough waters. And he will tell you exactly the way things are. Now, you may call it unsensitive, but it has nothing to do with sensitivity. He's honest. So don't get him wrong. Don't misunderstand it. It comes from a certain honesty. No monkey business. This sign does not believe in monkey business. The problem is that you can't do that. With sensitive people, you have to be sensitive. You have to be tactful. But that's the way he is. He will not pay a false compliment to win a friend. It's beneath him to flatter. If he says something nice, he's sincere. He's not faking it. Remember the sign, and I'm not going to repeat which sign it is. I don't want to insult anybody, but there are certain signs that can fake very well. Now that could be good. The rabbis actually tell us that for Shalom Bayit, you sometimes want to fake it. Okay, fine. But usually you want to be truthful. Midat HaEmet is a very, very strong midah. We don't believe in faking, in lying. And flattering is out of the question. To flatter someone, a compliment is not flattery. He's straight to the point. It's beneath him to flatter. But if he says something nice, he is sincere. He's truthful. He's honest. They have a gentle sympathy with the sick and despairing. You know, those people who are, as we call it in Yiddish, nebech. They're very good. There are certain signs like Virgo who can be very helpful, especially with those who need their help, who need your compassion and your empathy. Virgo and Scorpio can be very gentle with those who really, really need help. They react very well to difficult situations. Not every sign reacts well. Some people run away, don't want to deal with it. Some people are immersed in worry and despair, do not know how to deal with the situation. Scorpio knows how to deal with difficult situations. They rise above it or using their strength wisely. They will attract, as a result of their strength, they can attract dedicated admirers or envious enemies. Scorpios make enemies. And you will see why. It's a very, very extreme or intense sign. And depending on how the energy is channeled, it could either attract admirers or enemies, as we will see. Now, what happens to Scorpio is sometimes they take things personal, too personal. Remember, this is a water element, so again, there's sensitivity and there's emotions. But this is Niagara Falls, right? So therefore, when they take things too personal, they may sting others as an act of revenge. Of all the 12 signs, the one who is the strongest one in planning or in wanting revenge is Scorpio. Now, what happens here is they don't necessarily always sting others. You have a second type of Scorpio who is the type who doesn't want to start up with people. But you know what happens instead of starting up with others? He stings himself. What does it mean to sting himself? They withdraw. Does that sound familiar? Who else withdraws besides a Scorpio? A Cancer. I guess you were paying attention. A Cancer withdraws into his shell. And you won't hear from him for weeks perhaps. A Scorpio also, he's also a water sign, can withdraw, be bitter, and have this hatred for even minor injuries, quietly pray for their enemy's demise or their destruction. Cancer doesn't pray for their demise. You know, he's just bitter, he's just upset at the world. But this Scorpio will actually also wish for that guy to be destroyed. Whether he does it or not, that's something else. On the average, a Scorpio has no fear. On the average. That's good. And can bravely face physical pain, poverty, ridicule, and failure. So this is interesting. On the one hand, he's sensitive. He may take things personal and withdraw. On the other hand, this is very important for Scorpios to know. Because they can be fearless and they can take physical pain, poverty, and ridicule, they can handle all these silly criticisms of them and whatever problem. They are able to deal with problems almost better than anybody else. Therefore, why can't you just deal with this criticism or with this injury, emotional injury, properly? You can do it. This is a water sign, so that is one of the weakness. With a physical problem, physical pain, you will endure. But if it's emotional, if it's the heart, the feelings, he has a hard time with it. He can do so with a proud contempt and complete confidence in his ability to overcome a blow. Yeah, when it comes to physical pain, some problem, complete confidence. He can be intensely loyal to friends. He's intense. So when it comes to friendships, he can also be intensely loyal. But he can also be chilly to those he has no interest in. He's even capable of great sacrifice if needed. As I'm going through the sign, now you will be able to relate to some of what I said before about loyal friendship, about who's a friend, and so forth. He can be a very good friend. In time of need, he's capable of sacrifice. Not all signs are capable of sacrifice. Does that mean they don't love you? No. But not everyone is capable of sacrifice. I'll give you a quick example. My favorite example is your good friend is very ill. He's not dying, but he's very ill and he's in Kaiser Sunset. Kaiser Sunset is several miles away from here. Would you walk over to see him on Shabbat? So, depending on your sign, some signs may come up with an excuse. It depends on the weather. If it's hot or cold. Some signs will say, of course. He means everything to me. I'm not only going to walk, I'm going to spend time there. And some signs are going to say, well, I can see him on Shabbat. Nothing will happen if I don't see him one day. That's true too. It's all true. But you see how the reactions will vary depending on if it's a priority or not. How important is this to you to be with him, to hold his hand? Assuming you're allowed to hold his or her hand, of course. Right? So for some people, this is important. For some people, not as important. Is one not a true friend? They can all be true friends, depending on the sign. One is capable of sacrifice. I can walk 3-4 miles. What's the big deal? It's painful, but for a friend, I'm willing to do it. Not every sign reacts like that. Scorpio is capable of sacrifice, depending for who. They don't forget a gift or a kindness. They have a very good memory. The problem with this good memory is they also remember an injustice or an injury for the rest of their lives. Not for the rest of the year. Scorpio will remember for the rest of his life. You did something to him, forget it. Scorpio and a Taurus have this in common. They have very good memories about certain things. And they don't forget. And if you were their friend, or supposedly a friend, and you stabbed them in the back, no more friends. You ask forgiveness, it won't help you. Not with a Scorpio. With a Taurus, maybe it will help. Even a Taurus, if a Taurus forgives you, it will not be on the same level of friendship anymore. With a Scorpio, he won't even want to look at you. Just forget it. It's erased from his memory. In other words, the friendship is erased. He'll remember the injustice. Not only does he remember, he may even plan how to get even. Remember we talked about revenge? Scorpios think about getting even. Pisces doesn't think about getting even. Aquarius, for sure not. There are certain signs that don't think like that. There are other signs who may want to get even too. But it's not a passion. It's not a passion as it is for a Scorpio. I put here an example I saw in a book. If a neighbor scrapes his fender deliberately, the next day he will scrape 2 fenders of the neighbor's car and drive over his neighbor's lawn. Just, to get back at him. That's a Scorpio. In other words, he will get back. So if anybody ever gets back with the vengeance, cruel, suspect that he may be a Scorpio. Now the soft Scorpio, remember, there's a softie. There's a soft Scorpio too who's not as intense, not as revengeful, not as cruel. What will he do? He will react too. He feels terrible too, but he will hold the bitterness in himself for years, which causes themselves very deep melancholy. Not necessarily depression, but sadness, bitterness. Either they take it in or they take it out. There's no in between with a Scorpio. The resentment turned inwards and not expressed is like poison. It's not good. You got to get it out of you. This type of attitude or outward revenge is not healthy for them. This is one of the things that they have to work on, obviously. They need to conquer themselves by looking away and forgetting. Something which is very difficult because in their nature, they remember, they don't forget. And it bothers them. It gets in the way. They can handle certain difficult situations, but when it comes to the feelings, it's very difficult. All the water signs have a problem when it comes to feelings. But Scorpio is Niagara Falls, remember, right? So everything is much more intense. On the health side, a Scorpio has to watch out for excesses. Even though when we spoke about Libra, we talked about certain potential excesses, Scorpio is much more excessive than Libra. Much more. They can actually get into trouble because of their excesses. They have to watch out for excesses, melancholy, and overwork. The ones who are misguided, not the good ones, Baruch Hashem, we have a lot of good Scorpios here tonight, but the ones who are misguided can easily fall into drugs, alcohol, or criminal activity. Go to a jail, you'll find a lot of Scorpios. You will find actually every sign. But depending on the type of crime. Every crime has certain signs that are typical for it. What do they call it? Blue collar, white collar, red collar, right? There's different kinds of collar crimes, right? There's certain crimes that are more typical of certain signs. If they're misguided, they can get into trouble. The best vacation for him is a long rest and a change of attitude. For a Scorpio, that will do wonders for him. A Scorpio has a deep interest in religion. They're very deep people. They're intense, passionate, and they're curious about all the phases of life and death. You want to sell life insurance? Go to a Scorpio. They're concerned about death more than anybody else. Really. I don't think this life insurance companies know this, actually. This is a secret of the trade here. But it's true. They're very concerned about death, inheritance, dangerous situations. He has a passion for a physical relationship. When it comes to the physical part of a relationship, which is a different aspect of any connection in a friendship or in a marriage. There's the physical part. They have a certain passion for the physical. And he's very drawn to make changes and reform, sometimes doing so violently. The ones who are more violent in their speaking up and wanting change and reform can be Scorpios. Now, you may hear an Aries talking very loud and being very intense and voicing his opinion. That's different than violently doing something. In work, he quietly waits for his chance to move ahead because they have a certain degree of ambition. He can take control slowly but surely. No problem getting to the top because they're very confident of themselves. They're hard workers, ambitious. So they can do it. They can easily get to the top. If you really want something, it's no longer a dream. A lot of people are dreaming about it. A lot of people begin something and don't finish what they begin. Scorpio is pretty determined. And as long as he's not misguided, doesn't lose control over himself, then he can accomplish a lot. In the family, he can be heroic. Remember, in difficult situations, he can be heroic, dedicated, and love, and be protective of children and the weak. In public, he tends to have a hypnotic appeal over his audience. The reason I added this because of all the speakers, public speakers, the ones who tend to be very intense and therefore have a certain appeal, have Scorpio in them. And the reason for that is because they're very strong and believe in what they say, and they just have a certain magnetism to them. So in public, they can appeal to the audience, and they can also fiercely be possessive about what they believe in. They will fight. They're fighters. A Scorpio can be sadistic and cruel. Now, that sounds cruel to say that, right? but it's true. Cruelty and sadism, or sadism, which one is it? Yeah? Okay. Sadism and cruelty can be a characteristic that you will find in other people who are not Scorpio. But for the most part, Scorpio can have this weakness. It does not mean he for sure is cruel. It all depends if he's misguided, if he does not have control, if he's too passionate about what he believes in. He can come to that. Or he can become the finest healer, outstanding detective, composer of great music, or an actor of drama. The examples that I gave her is for a reason. Because a lot of the actors of drama, specifically, great composers of music, and detectives happen to be Scorpios. There has actually been a study done, statistically, and has shown a preponderance of certain signs and certain activities and certain occupations. They make excellent detectives. They're inquisitive, right? They're curious. They're private. They're secretive. And they have a sense for something, right? A feeling for something. They're passionate and hard workers and believe in whatever they believe. I'm going to figure out this murder. And they can be cool and controlled. Great spy. Great detective. These are the qualities that you need. And that is why they make good detectives. I'm sure there are Capricorn detectives. I'm sure Virgos are excellent detectives because they're very picky and detailed. Different kind. Some will work in the office. Some will work in the field. Some will not become detectives because they're very family-oriented. And this will take them away from the family. You see, so not every Scorpio will want to do this. But they have the capabilities for it. Sometimes he lives alone. Not because he's a loner. Right? There are certain signs that are more of a loner. He's not such a loner, but he's very private. And he sometimes may be living alone. At other times, however, you will see him facing the public, wearing a mask of calm, reserve, and control, hiding his intense desire to win. And this is the punchline at the very end. Scorpio, a true Scorpio, has the desire to win, to succeed, to get to the top, even though it may mean being not too sympathetic to the feelings of others, depending who those others are. He will be very nice to those he cares for, but he will not be too nice to those who he does not care for. Some differences between a Scorpio man and a Scorpio woman. Especially if you're going out with one, you're thinking of dating one, or you got married to one, and you're not sure if you did the right thing. Bezat Hashem, Baruch Hashem, you probably did the right thing because it's all min hashamayim anyway. But if you had a choice, this is what you should anticipate. A Scorpio man, for the most part, feels passionately about a lot of things. Politics, friendship, food, life, death. And he will make passionate declarations about everything. Whenever you hear someone making passionate declarations, this is the way it should be. I don't believe in this. I believe in that. You may be a Scorpio. Passionately making statements about what they believe in. They appear calm and steady, but beneath that sweet and cool surface, there can be boiling steam. You have to wait and see what happens. Can be sensual with a tendency towards excess food and drink. Can have an explosive temper and can bite very hard. I chose the word bite here instead of sting. Sting is very, harsh. But so is bite. But just for a change. They have a temper. But that temper, Baruch Hashem, is usually under control. For those of you who were not here before, I gave an example of two types of temper. One takes long to get angry. A year. It has to be something terrible that you did to him. But once he gets angry, that anger is, you can hear him. And not only can you hear him, he doesn't subside so quickly. Then you have the other individual who gets angry every 10, 15 minutes. He's upset at something. But he quiets down and subsides very quickly. Which one is worse? That's why I didn't say which one is better. That's why I say which one is worse. The second one is worse. The one who's always getting angry. The rabbis tell us midat hakas is a terrible midah. Somebody who's always getting angry shows a lack of emunah and bitachon. It's not a good-natured person. It shows that he's not tolerant. It's not a good thing to always get angry and to get angry about everything, even if you're calming down quickly. Scorpio does not get angry quickly. It does not necessarily get angry about everything either. But when he gets angry, he loses his temper. It could be explosive. He enjoys winning. He has to win. That's something that you need to know. Scorpio, for man and woman, they want to have the last word. They need to win. Now, there are Scorpios who, of course, will be softer, more sensitive, and more gentle, and forgiving. So not every Scorpio has to win, but a good deal of Scorpios, that is the way they feel. They have to be on top. His reactions are usually rigidly controlled, including his romantic intentions. You may not be able to figure out what he's trying to do, because he's more controlled. Unconcerned about what others think of him, which is good sometimes. You don't want to necessarily follow public opinion. So this could be good or bad. He would like to be respected, but if that interferes with his ideas, then he couldn't care less. He could be very, very cool about what other people have to say. He possesses honesty, courage, and integrity. Very, very special midot that not every sign has. Not every sign has a lot of honesty. No, some people will lie to make a buck. Scorpios are honest for the most part. Courageous and have integrity. Can deal very well with adverse situations. If he's not misguided, if he doesn't have a problem, he's not sick, a Scorpio can deal very well with all kinds of situations. He can be very helpful to others. Has high standards, but when it comes to humor, his humor may be rough and sarcastic. Remember, he tells you what he thinks. He's very direct. And not everybody likes that kind of humor. And it could be sarcasm too. Conceals his motives, so you may not know what he's up to. And if you ask for his opinion, be prepared to hear it as brutal as it gets. You asked for it. He's very frank in his comments, and he may tell you one day, you look awful. Who would say that? Not a Pisces, not a Taurus. Not everybody tells you in your face, you look awful. I mean, come on. But a Scorpio can do that. He's honest. He's being honest. But those who are sensitive don't want to hear that. Well, maybe you don't want to marry a Scorpio. He'll tell you you look awful if that's what he thinks. But he'll also tell you you are really beautiful today. And he means it. Remember, he means it. He's sincere. He's suspicious and jealous. So therefore, tread carefully. Oy vavoy if he sees you talking to another man. He's very suspicious and jealous, possessive. He's loyal to his close and deep ties. That for sure. Even though he may be doing wrong things, if he's not religious, Scorpios who are not religious can be doing a lot of wrong things. A lot of wrong things. A lot of wrong things. They can be excessive. But to his loyal and close ties, he will be loyal. As a father, he's stern. No nonsense with Scorpios. They're very stern. Expects his children to eventually stand alone. And that's very interesting about Scorpio, is that a Scorpio will support his kids, and after a while, stand up. I want you to be on your own feet. And he means it for their benefit. He wants them to learn to be on their own. Not every father can do that. Not every sign can do that. Some signs will feel bad and will give them everything they have. A father will give everything to his son. A Leo father who very much believes in his children will definitely give a lot to his kids, will support them, be with them on their side when they need him, right? There are all sorts of fathers, depending on the sign, who will, of course, want to help their kids. Scorpio does too, but he wants to teach his children a lesson, and it may be the hard way. Do it on your own. And eventually, when the child grows up, he will actually respect and look back to his father. That was the right thing for him to do. Will not accept being dictated to. Scorpio has a problem, does not want to be told what to do. Needs a very understanding partner, very understanding, to whom he will be tender and devoted. If that partner is understanding of him, if she really is understanding of his nature, he will be tender and devoted to her. No problem. Remember, he can be harsh. He can be stern. No nonsense. Tell you brutally the facts, how he feels. But to those who he cares about, to those who are devoted to him, understanding of him, he shouldn't have any problem. He will be tender and devoted. Scorpio woman. Very magnetic individual, proud and totally confident. She will want to dominate. And most Scorpio women dominate. They are sometimes the ones that actually wear the pants, as they say in English, right? To wear the pants. But she will let her husband be the boss, usually, because she understands that that's his position. But oy vavoy for a Scorpio woman if she marries a Scorpio, not a Scorpio man, but some man who has no confidence, no ambition, she will suffer from that because, as you will see soon, what kind of a husband she's looking for. She means business. Don't flirt with her. Scorpio woman wants to get down to business. Can be overbearing and frigid and then turn hot. Because she conceals herself. She doesn't necessarily come across one way or another. One moment she can be frigid, the other moment she can be hot. Can hate with bitter venom and love fiercely. They have the ability to hate, right? Remember revenge? Or to love fiercely in those who they believe in. Don't insult her. That could be very dangerous. She's looking for a strong mate, an ambitious, intelligent, and courageous man. That's what a Scorpio woman looks up to. Will know much about you at the very first glance. In other words, the first moment she sees you, she will know a lot about you. She either likes something or totally dislikes it. So she's not a wishy-washy person. She can keep secrets, and you can confide in her. But you know what? She's very private and will not reveal all that she thinks and she feels. In other words, if you give her information, you confide in her, fine. She can hold a secret. But she will not reveal even to her own husband the deep feelings that she may, or he may be feeling. They don't say everything. That's something about them, that they're very, very private and they have this fear of revealing everything. Watch out for her temper. Remember we said before, explosive. If it comes out, it can be very, very temperamental. She may fight you in private, but will defend you in public. That's Baruch Hashem, at least for that. She won't whine or complain. Not Scorpio. They're not kvetchers. They're not feeble. They're not softies. They won't complain. Remember, they can take physical pain very well, so they're not the type to complain. Won't stand anyone taking advantage of you or maligning you. You're married to a Scorpio woman, she will stand up for you. Can be ruthless and revengeful and very suspicious. Will tell you who to trust. You bring somebody, you tell your Scorpio wife, you know what, I'm thinking of going into partnership with him. No way in the world. I smell a rat. And she smells a rat. In other words, she'll be suspicious, she'll be able to be. As it is, women are very intuitive. They know a lot of things. They can see a lot of things. Scorpio woman, she'll describe you. She'll describe him to you very well. Loves her home and has everything under control. Loyal to her friends, but can be aloof and snobbish to those she doesn't like. Remember, as we said before, they can be frigid or hot, depending who it is. They can be very loyal. They can be very good friends to those with those they like, but aloof or snobbish, and very cold to those they don't like. As far as budget, when it comes to the budget, the money, Scorpios are very funny. They can either be very skimpy or saving, or all of a sudden they can spend a lot. They're not very consistent when it comes to budget. Some signs are more regular. Either they're always saving money, like the Virgos, not spending too much, looking for the best deal, the best buys, or like the Cancer, who wants to save for a rainy day because they have certain fears of tomorrow, and will not be extravagant, like the Aries, and not even think about the future. A Scorpio can be both, depending on the time. Perseverant and determined, very determined sign. She likes to even the score and have the last word. Remember getting even? Well, Scorpios like to get even. Enjoys money, prestige, and power. It just gives them a good sense, a good feeling. If you tell her a lie, she will tell you too. If you're not nice to her one evening, she may not be nice to you for several weeks. You know. Yeah. What is that? No, there's a story of a Scorpio woman. Her husband one night did not kiss her goodnight, and she said, I'm not touching him for the next month. That's typical Scorpio. He forgot one time, didn't do it. Okay, you're going to see. Has a strong sense for justice, but in emotions only sees her viewpoint. Here she's very, very strong about justice. She fights for justice. But when it comes to her feelings and emotions, she only sees her viewpoint. Remembers every kindness, but also every wrong. They remember everything. Will encourage her children to strive for high goals, and will be to them a wise counselor. Children of Scorpio mothers and Scorpio fathers will always remember them as a source of strength. The same is true with a Cancer woman and a Taurus woman. Excellent mothers and very, very strong. At first, the Scorpio women can be too strong, just like the Scorpio father. But in the end, the children will always remember them as a source of strength and a wise counselor. Advice for Scorpio children, if you have any Scorpio children, when they're very young, they enjoy a good fight. They don't like to compromise. Don't let him dictate to you, because he might try. He needs constant and firm discipline. Needs to be taught to be a good sport when he loses. They have a hard time being a good sport when they lose. Remember what we said before, they have to win. Needs to learn respect for authority and to be forgiving. They have a hard time with authority. And to be forgiving. Will learn from someone who's stronger than him. If there's somebody who's stronger than him, smarter than him, better than him, that is his best chance as a student to learn from. He will learn. He will agree to learn from somebody who's stronger than him. He's blunt in his speech. Needs his privacy. May take revenge from pranksters. I use the pranksters as an example. Somebody that does something to him, he may take revenge. So watch out for these things. Keep him active physically and mentally. That's the best thing for Scorpio children. They always have to be active, both physically and mentally. They're loyal to their friends. That's not going to be a problem with their friends. But when it comes to telling them what to do, be careful not to impose your will. They don't like it. And don't break your word to him. Remember, they're honest, sincere, justice. If you promise, keep your word. Don't break your word to him. Direct his passion. They have a lot of passion, a lot of energy. That has to be guided to the right thing. You notice a certain strength, a certain interest that he has, and he can do it. Direct it to a positive venue. Otherwise, Chas v'Shalom, it can go misdirected to something which is unacceptable. They may be very passionate, very intense about something, so be careful to direct it properly. All right, what do you do if you have a Scorpio boss? What should you look out for? Remember Teddy Roosevelt? President number 26 of the USA. Beginning of the 20th century. Interesting individual. He came up with the saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. If you remember that motto, that was his, and he's a Scorpio. And it's very, very typical to Scorpio. Speak softly, but carry a big stick. And you may have to use that big stick. Good control over his nature, the boss, usually. Doesn't tire easily. They can work very hard. Will want to know everything about you and will figure things out on his own. A lot of bosses, Scorpios, or even not a boss, they can tell a lot about you and you don't even realize that they know certain things. You never told them. They just feel it. He will want to know everything about you and he can sense your moods. Secretive, and he will disguise his motives. He will be private about his feelings, about his intentions. You may never know it. The good thing about Scorpios is that they are what they are. If he likes you, he will advance you. He will help you. If he doesn't like you, he won't even hire you. They don't play games. He's very good in emergencies. Suspicious. Now the problem with his suspicion, sometimes it's so extreme that he may actually think that the employers are plotting to overthrow him. If you flatter him too much, he may think you're buttering him up. Is that correct way of saying it? To butter him up? Because he might think you want to take over. He might be suspicious. Remember, Cancer also has certain fears and insecurities. Also, this is water, a water element. Certain fears or insecurities. But here, it's more than that. It's suspicion. He's afraid. On the other hand, this man can tackle tough problems. So he's a tough cookie. He's very strong. On the one hand, he's suspicious, but he's strong. All right, real quickly, let's go over the midot. Does Scorpio have to work on gava and arrogance? Not really. He's unassuming. Anava, humbleness? Maybe a little bit. Because if he would be a little bit more humble, he wouldn't be aloof and frigid to those he doesn't like. Okay, so he could work on anava. Busha, timid and shyness, timidity, bashfulness. He's not aggressive in a, like the Aries and Leo. Does he lack shyness? Maybe a little bit, but not that much. Azut, is he very aggressive? He can be. He can be very blunt. Right? So maybe he has to control a little bit the azut, the chutzpah. Azut is like chutzpah. Ahava, can he be loving? Very much. Firstly loving. But only to the ones he wants and chooses. He's very selective. He may have to develop ahava towards others too. Sinah, can he hate? Oh, can he hate? He has to work a lot on hatred. Sinah. Rachamim, compassion and empathy, he has for the weak. But he needs to be compassionate for others too. Is he achzaryut? Is he cruel? Oh, a lot of achzaryut. He is the one that has to work on this. We've been going through several signs, and for the most part, we skipped over achzaryut, He has this problem.
That's only when he's being attacked.
Of course. No, only of course. He's not cruel just for being cruel. But he can be cruel. If you want to torture somebody and get information, hire a Scorpio. He'll stick nails. He'll electrocute the guy. He'll put water over him. Oh, believe me, a Scorpio knows how to torture. He can be cruel. And if he's an Arab Scorpio, oy vavoy. Simcha. He needs to work on simcha. Because he's not always happy. He can be miserable, melancholic. Da'aga, he doesn't have too much worries because he's pretty confident. He can win. Harata. Does he regret? No, not always. He actually wants to get even. And as far as regretful of something he did in the past, it could be very difficult for him. Ka'as, anger. He's not the angry type. He's not quick to anger, but if he gets angry, he's explosive. So he may have to work on his ka'as. Ratzon, can you appease him? No, not so easily. He has to work on appeasement, forgiving. Kina, is he jealous? Yes. Possessive and jealous. He has to work on not being jealous. Zerizut, he doesn't have a problem. He's not lazy. He's pretty diligent. Zeirut, is he cautious? Okay. He's pretty cautious. He doesn't take risks. Like an Aries, jumping into a pool without checking if there's water, remember? Aries. Check if there's water before you jump in. Aries just jumps. Atzlut, he's not lazy. Nedivut, can he be generous? Yes, he can be very generous. Tzaikanut, is he stingy? He doesn't have the problem of stinginess. Zechira, does he remember? Too well. He remembers everything. There's certain things that he has to forget about. Shichecha, does he forget? He doesn't forget. But you have to forget. Don't forget your debts. And try to forget the wrongs that were done to you. Shetika, no problem whatsoever. He can keep his mouth shut for a whole month. No problem with keeping silent. Shekeri, does he lie? No, he's a very honest man. Emet, does he have to work on emet? No. He's sincere. He's genuine. Hanifu, does he flatter? He hates flattery. Lashon hara, usually not. He's not into Lashon hara. But he will want to find out everything and know everything. Doesn't mean he will share it. That's the difference. Teshuvah, can he do teshuvah? He's very strong. Once he's made up his mind, he could be a fanatic. He could be a zealot. He could be a very strong Baal teshuvah. But till that point, it may take some work. Because he thinks he might think he's right. He might believe in the opposite cause. He might be a communist. For him to do teshuvah, it will be difficult. It may be difficult. Torah, to learn Torah, you have to be consistent, persevering. He does have perseverance. He can be very determined, perseverant. Yirat Shamayim, he has a problem. Why? Because he doesn't like authority. Authority? Somebody's going to dictate to me how to run my life? He may have a problem with Yirat Shamayim. Maybe. Savranut, patience, he's okay. He can have patience. Ta'avot, too many. He can have a lot of ta'avot and desires. Excesses of food, drink, and other stuff. Kavod, is he looking for kavod? He wants to be respected, but he's not going to pursue it like a Leo or like an Aries. Nekama, too much also. Revenge, wants to get even. He has to work and not taking nekama lotikom velotitor. Dikaon, depression, he may have a problem when he's bitter. And letzanut, to ridicule others, he can be sarcastic, but he doesn't ridicule others like the Gemini or like the Sagittarius we'll talk about, who can make fun, he is a no-nonsense man. So he does not necessarily make fun of others. He takes life seriously, sometimes too seriously. Anyway, I hope this gives you a little bit of a overview of who Scorpio is. And let's not forget the last point, one of the points that we spoke about in the very beginning of the introduction, Ezo Gibora Koveshet Yitzro. No matter which weaknesses you may have, we all have the strength to overcome those weaknesses. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not give anybody a challenge that he cannot deal with. You were born with a certain tendency or a certain inclination to be cruel or to be stingy or to be lazy. All of these things are not desirable, but we may have certain tendencies depending on our sign. That could be your challenge, that could be your tikkun. But because it's your challenge and because it's your tikkun and you're part of your mission, you also were given the tools and B'ezrat Hashem also the intelligence to deal with it. What will it depend on? If you have a roadmap, if you are guided, and that guide is the Torah. If a person does not learn Torah, he will not necessarily succeed. He may succeed if he's determined. And that leads us to the final point of tonight. You have to have a desire to succeed. The husband and wife are getting married underneath the chuppah. They may be very different. One is a man and one is a woman. They may be opposite signs and not too compatible, but you know what? If they have the desire to succeed, no matter what happens, they will succeed. And in order to succeed, you have to be respectful of other people's feelings. You have to be tolerant of them. You may not necessarily have to agree with them. Okay, we don't agree. We agree to disagree. But be respectful. Accept everybody for what they are. There are lessons that we all have to learn, and Scorpio is not an exception. You may have seen a lot of weaknesses here. You may have heard a lot of weaknesses here. But remember, all the signs have their fair share of weaknesses. Scorpio is not necessarily worse than anybody else. He has a tremendous strength. It all depends on if it's guided correctly or not. B'ezrat Hashem, as parents, as friends, we want to help guide ourselves. And once we are able to guide ourselves and control ourselves, we will also be able to help and guide others as well. B'ezrat Hashem.